Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast, live Underdog stream edition. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and I am here to draft the best ball team alongside PFF's finest, Dwayne The Rock McFarland, also resident ranking expert, Nathan Yonke. Fellas, been a minute, but we're back, ready to, enter the puppy. We already have, and hopefully win some money. Dwayne, how's your Tuesday?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we've already spent some time together, so it's going good since I got to hang out with you. But now it's even better because I get to hang out with Nate. So, yeah, looking forward to this puppy too. I love the format, love how they time box these. So if other stuff happens later in the season, doesn't matter. We're only dealing with the people that drafted in this window for the puppy too. So that's one of the benefits of it.
Naturally, Dwayne and I did a catch-up news podcast earlier today, and we missed the absolutely massive news that N'Keal Harry has been traded to the Bears for a 7th-round pick. So, you know what? We'll just worry about that another time. I'm not ready to. I'm like we're doing the drafts. Like I can't go outside and touch some grass right now, but I still feel like we just need to be better. Nathan, you went ahead and took Cooper Kupp at the 102. Why and how's it going?
First off, it's going well. Happy Scott Fishbowl week. Guess there's really a decision at two with the two guys that got picked after me as well. One, I like both Kupp and Jefferson a little bit more than McCaffrey, just the risk involved with it. I'm happy enough to get running backs at the end of the second round, start of the third round if I want some running backs there. And I just worry that he could lose a little bit of playing time where I feel a lot safer with both Kupp and Jefferson. And between the two wide receivers, I feel like it's a coin flip basically. Kupp's just slightly safer, but Jefferson probably has a little more upside.
I have been snagging all the Deontay Foreman when he's down there in like the 16th, 17th round. Truly like one of the single latest kind of potential high upside handcuffs you can get right there with Jamal Williams. I am now on the clock. I was saying before, I keep getting this damn draft slot. And you know what, guys? I keep taking Travis Kelce. Like when I have to pick between Najee Harris or, basically Stephon Diggs usually gone. I have to go either Najee or one of my kind of wide receiver 5 or beyond. And just having Travis Kelce there does make you feel good because you can usually still get one of these ballers on the go round. Dwayne, I know you've done quite a few drafts here over the past month. How often do you find yourself getting Kelce in round 1?
Quite a bit when I'm down on this end. And man, something I haven't got to do. I haven't got to pair him with Adams yet. I've been wanting to because both in the AFC West, you're going to get the natural shootouts through the season. Yeah, it's I haven't been able to pull that one off. So you're getting right now, Devontae Adams is sitting there for you behind ADP. Look at you.
I'll do it just because you were talking about it, Dwayne. Actually had this exact construction happen earlier. Devontae seems to be sliding ever so slightly, but probably not too big of a deal there. Dwayne, I did notice you went ahead and took Dalvin Cook ahead of Najee Harris. It's a time. We're doing it. And Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I have him ranked ahead of them both now. So I feel like, we've got to be on brand here, Ian. This is a PFF show.
No, but this is new. Like what made you put him ahead of Henry? I thought we were team Dalvin RB6. I'm not saying it's wrong. I do agree they're in this big tier. Maybe we are undervaluing Dalvin, the consensus 102 last season. Just, Dalvin versus Derrick Henry. Why, sir?
Yeah, it's just the explosive, playmaking ability that Cook has. And he's also involved in the passing game. Derrick Henry obviously has a big upside, right, if things go right. And we like Derrick Henry more in a half PPR than we do in a full. So I think it's fine if you want to go with Henry, but, Cook's a little bit younger. I like his overall offense better. So I just feel like there's a little bit more upside with Dalvin Cook. I know last year he came down a little bit, but you and I were talking about it on the pod the other day. Like in the games where he was fully healthy, it was more, I have to go back and look, but I want to say in the games where he was fully healthy, it was still like 18 fantasy points per game. And then, the year before it was like 24. So he's still in that range where we can get the high end upside we want involved in both facets of the game, which is obviously my preference.
Looking at the board, still got Mark Andrews, top player available. He is usually gone by the middle parts of round 2. After him, we're seeing Kyle Pitts go around, usually midway through round 3. George Kittle, Darren Waller after that. Guys, going through our lovely PFF fantasy projections, and we have Kittle 1 target ahead of Debo. And at first I scoffed. Then I went back, did a little research myself. Yeah, last year, yes, Deebo Samuel did average more targets per game than George Kittle. 2 previous years, though, even on a per-game basis, accounting for injuries for both guys, Kittle was over Deebo. Dwayne, we've talked a lot about, just the potential for Kittle if he stays healthy, which, yes, it's a big if, but my God, man, if he can stay healthy and you get George Kittle having a career year in the 4th or 5th round, like as you always say, man, when we're thinking about some of these players, like, is this a player that you could like really be kicking yourself for not taking at this spot a couple months from now? George Kittle could absolutely be that guy.
Yeah, and at tight end, we know we get such a big drop-off, right? You just want to have access to the guys that have the big upside up top that make it where, oh my gosh, if they go off, you're basically getting a wide receiver 1-like performance out of them. There's only a handful that can do it. And so Kittle gives you the biggest discount, right? So, I mean, Waller goes a little bit ahead of him in the 4th round. Kittle goes towards the end of the 4th round, early 5th round in most of these. And it's just a differentiator, at the position for you. So, yeah, I love Kittle. I put out a thread last week on Twitter, just using targets per route run and routes run per dropback. And most people don't realize that. You'll hear a lot like people like, oh, well, George Kittle, he's a blocker. Yeah, he's a good run blocker. He does not stay into pass block, though. 84% of the time, the 49ers drop back to pass in games where he played at least 10% of the snaps. 84% of the time, he was in a route, which is the same as what we see with Kelsey. It's the same as what we see with Mark Andrews. So the 49ers know, like, they've got an awesome playmaker. You just got to get him out there. The big problem is we know it's a run-heavy offense. We know Debo's there. Brandon Ayuk is also a good talent. So, yeah, there's some challenges. You got quarterback questions. But whenever you're getting into the 4th and 5th rounds, like, Kittle's a guy that I love.
Nathan, you also agree. You have George Kittle, tight end 3 in your PPR rankings, which everyone can go find at pff.com. And you know what? If you do happen to need a subscription to go access those rankings, boy, you're listening to the right stream, because using promo code PFF, spend just $10 over at Underdog Fantasy. They'll actually match your deposit up to $100. And again, using promo code PFF, get a free PFF subscription. All you got to do is sign up over at Underdog Fantasy, get that free PFF subscription, and check out, again, the one, the only ranking resident expert, Nathan Yonke. Tight end 3 for George Kittle. I will say, Nate, as you grab Keenan Allen in the 3rd round, Mike Williams a little low, wide receiver 18. Man, it's a weird time these days. It is 2022, and in these streets these days, we're seeing him go wide receiver 12, wide receiver 13. Though a little bit in this one, but are you comfortable, Nate, basically going through this, not getting much of Mike Williams?
Yeah, I think the Chargers passing offense, they're going to have so much volume, and they don't have a ton of good options outside of those two. Of course, Eckler in the backfield, but they are okay at tight end. They probably are pretty below average at 3rd wide receiver. So having those two, I think both wide receivers will see a ton of volume. I just trust Keenan Allen and just how much production he's had year in, year out, and hasn't seemed to slow down yet. Where Mike Williams, he was a player last year where he seemed to have stretches where he was playing well, stretches where maybe he wasn't playing as well. So Allen's just someone that I trust more.
I agree, and do have Keenan 1 spot ahead of Mike, but maybe, the answer is both. Running backs flying off the board rather early in this one. I'm used to being able to kind of have my pick between Connor and ETN and a few here. They went. Now I have Pittman and, oh boy. I haven't drafted a lot of Cam Akers, but I know if I take him now, I have no chance of getting the Kelsey Mahomes stack. So I'm going to do a slight reach here. Patrick Mahomes, round 4, maybe get Derek Carr later. We'll see if I regret it, but man, Kelsey Mahomes to start. That's the one we want there. And Dwayne, we were talking about this on the pod today. I'll let you pick here, but the more we try to anoint Juju or, oh, hey, MVS is the star of OTAs, or hey, don't forget about Mecole Hardman. Like, the most realistic outcome is probably Travis Kelce going the hell off like he does every year, and everyone else, putting in their 1/5 over there, because like they said in Moneyball, you can't replace Jason freaking Giambi. Maybe you can get 3 guys to maybe come in and help together combine to do it. So same kind of thing with Tyreek and these receivers. And Dwayne, you're continuing to get some exposure to Juju, and I do think that's smart, because at the end of the day, he is a potential top receiver in the Chiefs offense. But man, Lazard and MVS, like, those are going to be the ones you're going to be tilting your face off with every Sunday, because no, they haven't freaking done it before. But my God, they could be the number 1 for Mahomes and Rodgers. Does this keep you up at night?
No, I'm actually tired of talking about it.
we got a couple more months of it, my friend.
We've got a long way to go. Look, it's just about their ADPs. They've risen so much. Look, and I feel pretty confident about it. Like, guys that have their profile have not broken out, even when they've gotten their quarterback upgrade. So I'm not I'm really not that worried about it, and I can live with it at the end of the day. I think the most likely outcome for Lazard and MVS, if they do break out, is, oh, great, they gave me an 19% target share in an offense. I don't think it's going to be something that breaks me. Obviously, there is that 1% chance that it could really hurt me. So I do get exposure to both players. I meant to text you the other day. I have a share of Allen Lazard now.
Whoa.
He went like 15 picks
Let me
after
get the
ADP.
siren out.
Yeah. So I know that I've got to get some exposure when they go past ADP, which has really just been my approach, at this point. So it's like when I do all this research and it's kind of pointing me in one way, like I can't just ignore it. Be like, well, fine, I'll just take MVS just because. Like, look, MVS has already played with a really good quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. And even in the games where you didn't have Devontae Adams, guess what? He didn't do anything. I know. He looks like the best receiver ever on the planet, according to Andy Reid, whenever they're all in shorts. We'll see what happens in September.
Short Gamer TV, thanks for watching. Ian, how much Duke Johnson exposure do you have? Yeah, I'm kind of a fraud here, people. I got the free Duke Johnson username, and I am yet to draft Duke Johnson. So one of these days, I just got to burn the 18th round pick and go get the used all-time leading rusher. Like, there really are worse ways to spend it. Kind of wish they didn't feel the need to go get James Cook, though. We'll see if Dwayne's wet dream comes true and the Bills find a way to add Kareem Hunt to the equation. Probably unlikely, though. Nathan, you just went around the turn, got George Kittle. Dwayne's probably freaking out about your loaded West start here. You got Javonte, David Montgomery now, Cooper Kupp, Keenan Allen, and George Kittle. How are you feeling through 5 rounds, Nate?
Fairly happy so far. Went in, did my big PPR rankings update that went out today. So went through and updated all of my rankings, got my rankings updated here at Underdog. So far, I've basically been following my board, just picking the top guy on my list, and I've been happy with the results so far.
Absolutely balling per usual. Dwayne, is it Kyler if he gets to you?
I don't think I can do it this draft, to be honest. I've gone with 3 running backs and a tight end to start. Like, taking Kyler here makes it pretty crazy. But
I'm not going to take him, so he might come back to you.
I don't think he's going to come back to me.
Or my line.
I mean, well, Juju's my pick if I don't take Kyler.
Oh, over Brandon Cooks? Why?
Yeah, I want access to that AFC West. So, I mean, that gives me Kansas City. I've got Vegas. I've already got the Minnesota, Green Bay, the 2 passing down backs facing off in week 17 with Cook and Aaron Jones.
Nate's
tough,
got
man.
Juju wide receiver 33. He gets it.
Yeah, it's just tough.
I don't see him on my screen right now, I don't think.
Oh, yeah, he just went.
Oh, yeah, that's probably why.
I thought you had your own rankings. You just left them.
Yeah,
that's what I thought. That's what I thought too. No, I took Juju with my pick. It's tough to start with the 3 backs and the tight end and to come back with the quarterback. Just because you guys know how fast the receivers go over here. Like, I would be staring down at my wide receiver 3 would be, something like, I'd probably be something like Sky Moore is my wide receiver 3 if I didn't go ahead and take one.
Okay.
Which, I got worse things, in life than Sky Moore. I want Sky Moore on my team. I don't necessarily want him to be counting on him to start week 1. That's the beauty of best ball. I
feel the same way about AJ Dillon as my RB1, but you know what? Weirder things have happened. My start, Mahomes, Kelsey, quarterback, tight end stack. AJ Dillon's going to be our first running back. What the kids might call 0 RB. I guess we're goofing around with here. Then got Devontae Adams, Michael Pittman, and Brandon Cooks as big 3 wide receivers. So I'm feeling all right here. It's there really are certain ranges of each position that I think you can feel good about. Dwayne, maybe this is something that now that we're done with our 8-week-long team preview series that we can focus a little bit more on, because I'm sure you guys see it when you go through these, just situations where we're taking our quarterbacks in rounds 5 or 6 because the selection isn't that great, and don't love the running backs in the early 20s necessarily. Once we get to the later ones, the rounds they're going, they are pretty reasonable. Dwayne, you did go ahead and who'd you just take? Amon-Ra St. Brown. Nate, where do you fall on Amon-Ra? You're, as I'm looking it up, wide receiver 25. Apparently pretty good.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, he was the top wide receiver on my board at the time of the pick. Got excited about him this year. I think he can remain their top player in targets this year, despite all of the changes they made at wide receiver and ideally having everyone healthy in the offense. But he just played so well down the stretch last year that if anything, you would hope a rookie improves in his second year. So maybe his target share maybe isn't quite as high, but hopefully his efficiency is a little bit better this year. Plus, hopefully the offense plays better in general, which gets them down in the red zone, more touchdown opportunities. So I'm excited for him this year.
I took like a long, almost like a whole minute of podcast time just listing like the 66 wide receivers, including Amon-Ra, that had scored, I think it was like 5 games with at least 20 PPR points just over the past like 20 years. So I'll save all you guys from that same speech there. But, it was, again, though, it was one just great wide receiver after another. And okay, there's a Laurent Robinson here and who's the Bears guy? There were a few exceptions. Eddie Royal was the other one I was thinking of. A few guys out there, and maybe, but when you look at the offseason additions, DJ Chark is going to be an outside guy. He's not touching Amon-Ra's usage. Jamison Williams might not be back here for the first month at least of the season. No one else is that big of a threat. Like, I understand Hawkinson and Swift were out, but other than the occasional running back target and handoff here and there for Amon-Ra, which, like, cool that he was getting that in the first place, I just don't think they're going to be eating much into it. He is the number one receiver for a quarterback that has a pretty nice history of enabling fantasy relevant receivers. Like, I'm not saying you have to love Kirk Cousins or love Jared Goff, but these guys have helped a lot of good receivers put together great seasons. Don't be afraid to go fetch some of those wide receivers, expected to do that in 2022. Nate, snagging Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Dwayne and I were talking a little bit about him today. It just sucks that we need to concern ourselves this much about Jerick freaking McKinnon in the year 2022 when it comes to Clyde. Like, Nate, how confident can you be that Clyde can be the leading rusher? Because we are getting a little bit of Rojo steam here, and also target getter with Jerick now in the picture.
Yeah, well, I think any running back that we're talking about this late in the draft has at least one, if not two other people that you're concerned about. So that's why he's fallen as far as he has. But I think if you're believe that injuries were a big cause of what led to his problems last year. And the other two running backs, it's just a big question mark of they could definitely be a big factor or they could be a complete non-factor. We saw Ronald Jones go from the lead rusher in Tampa Bay to barely on the field. Jerick McKinnon went from barely playing last year to being a contributor in the playoffs. So I think it basically can be a hot hand kind of thing where if Clyde Edwards-Helaire is playing well, I could see the other two running backs barely seeing the field, where if he's not playing well, then they'll rotate more and see what happens.
I went ahead and snagged Tony Pollard as my RB2. Look at those handcuffs. This is the ultimate you could imagine lineup going on. Some might say that's ideal for tournament play. I don't know. Dwayne, I don't know what I'm looking at here, so if you have anything to say about what you're thinking, that'd be great so I can freaking concentrate, man.
Yeah. Right now, I'm sitting on a roster with the 3 backs is how I started. Here's the one thing, and Nathan, I want to get your thoughts. Like, I like the profile of the guys I got. I got Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones, Travis Etienne, all explosive playmakers, work in the receiving game. That's kind of like what I'm looking for. And I think there's a potential, like, if you get your running backs right, and you win the flex with your running back spot, like we've seen when that happens in the past, like how big that can be. The problem is, later in drafts, like whenever you can be throwing, darts at some of these other running backs that we know have spike week potential, but also could turn into something really good if their running back in front of them goes down, like you're kind of negating some of that. So just be interested, Nathan, in your thoughts on starting any of these drafts, running back. Have you done it? And then that'll give me time to make my pick as well.
Yeah, I have definitely done it before. I think it's a viable strategy just because there's such a huge drop off at running back once you get to a certain point around running back 20 or so, where first you have the guys that are either really good, have a lot of opportunity, or both. And then everyone else after that is either not as talented or in a very clear timeshare. So definitely health is a huge thing. So you have to hope that all 3 guys remain healthy throughout the season. But there are just so many good wide receivers that you can get later in the draft as well. I was writing my sleeper wide receiver article, went up today, and I basically fell in love with all 5 wide receivers that you can get in the mid rounds after writing about them and thinking, okay, there's a decent chance that this player can do well. All he needs is this to go right, or those kinds of things. And you draft so many wide receivers that you only need a couple of them to hit. So I think it's perfectly fine to go running back heavy early and then get a lot of wide receivers later.
And it's just a matter of if you hit or not, because like we know that running backs outscore, wide receivers in their top end range of outcomes, like the top 5 finishers since 2011 in half PPR formats, like 79% of them have been running backs, right? So that top end, if you can hit on it, It's really great. I will say it is typically harder to find the late round wide receivers than potentially finding a running back that could, through injury luck, right, all of a sudden, and we just care about the touches, could find their way into a workload. But I think you said something that's really interesting, Nate. And I think this is something that people forget about. Each year, everything's different, right? I think a lot of the way you want to think about building your rosters depends on how strong do you think the positional pool is later in the draft at each spot, right? And where do you have the most confidence? So, for example, like you're looking at your receiver sleepers, you're looking at your running back sleepers, or you're just looking maybe at receivers that are just undervalued. Maybe they don't even necessarily qualify right as sleepers. Yeah. And so that's typically where I start. And so I wrote an article earlier this season, like reverse engineering the perfect draft. And it all starts with that. Like, where is the strength in the draft? Like between round 18, between round 8 and 14. And what does that look like? And every year it is a little bit different. So I thought it was interesting that you brought that up. Do you have a leaning right now this year as to which positions you think can provide the most value late? Because the other thing you don't want to be doing is like pinning your hopes on like two guys, and if you miss on them, right, your strategy's gone. Like you need to have a few viable options that, even if you need to reach a little bit past ADP, but to make your roster constructions work, like that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I think wide receiver is definitely strong late, and I think quarterback's a position where it makes some sense to get one of those top 5 or 6 guys. They definitely stand out from everyone else. But if you miss out on those 6 guys, I think quarterback is deep enough after that point where I can rank 13, 14, 15 guys where I'd be comfortable with any of them starting. So might as well. This is probably thinking more about redraft than best ball right now. But that I be happy waiting and letting the 11 other teams get quarterbacks before I consider getting one, because there's enough guys that I like if I miss out on those top 6 players.
Yep. And I was going to actually have to take Hawkinson, if he, even though I already have Waller, I was like, man, 20 picks past ADP, it's like pretty much anything, is game.
He's sliding, man. He's just not one of those. We were talking about the Lions. I just think he's a little bit better in real life. Like, we just haven't seen him put up the same sort of route efficiency numbers, not to be too much of a freaking nerd, as some of these other tight ends. Like, I just think Goddard and, maybe Dawson Knox. It's at least Dawson Knox has Josh Allen throwing him the ball, Other guys have a few more things going for him. I was about to get some comments. I am on the clock. You know what? I've been talking a little bit of shit about him, but Ramondre Stevenson, I keep being okay with in round 9 or 10 or so, especially if I did go late on the running back room. So I'll get shares there. I do know a lot of smart people like him, and similar to my feelings on Juju, even if I maybe don't fully see it, don't want to be completely at zero when we got a lot of these drafts rolling out anyway. But hey, William Sampson asking about Chris Godwin going after Amon-Ra St. Brown. Dwayne, why don't you talk a little bit about our conversation on Godwin today and our overall expectation for when he'll be back?
Yeah, so the latest, on NFL Live, Schefter came out and said there's a potential, right? They hope, quote unquote, that Godwin will be ready. However, whenever, you talked about the quotes from Greg Auman from, that covers Tampa Bay locally, he said, yeah, they're hopeful for that, but there's still the chance that he starts on the PUP. They would love to not have to put him on the PUP. Most of our medical community in the fantasy football world, which has improved so much, like shout out to all the folks that are doing hard work. Like, talk about one of the areas that has advanced the most in the last 5 years of fantasy football. Like, I love it. But like Edwin Porras has been on, our pod, Ian, chatting with you. When I was actually out on vacay, I was so jealous because I love Edwin. But, just talking about the fact that it's probably, going to be tough for him to return before mid-October, or early November. And so I think that's still in the range of outcomes. So whenever you got a player like that with Godwin, to me, that just moves Amon-Ra St. Brown, ahead, for me. And it's really not even that close.
We even have Russell Gage ahead of Godwin at this point.
Yes. I have Godwin at wide. I have him at 73 overall, which is like 15 spots, I think, below his ADP. His ADP is sliding over here, but I think it's kind of stabilized since that one little report last week. But I think it's still, and if you want to cool off a little bit, on Russell Gage, you can. My thing with Russell Gage is it's not just about Godwin. This guy has been an ascending player for the last 2 years. All of his underlying data points, not to get too nerdy, like Ian said, like all point to a potential breakout. And now you land in the Bucs offense with Tom Brady, without Rob Gronkowski. Let's say that Godwin is ready for the beginning of the year. I think we can all agree that he's not going to be the same Godwin right away, right? Yeah. So, but even if we thought Godwin was going to be full speed by week 8, I think Russell Gage can still carve out a role in this offense as being one of the top options and can still give you value. So, yeah, Godwin is a player that I'm just kind of waiting on right now. Let's hear more information. Let's actually see him practice before we, spend a high draft pick on him. Because even once we hear that he's going to play, like, I think we've kind of already seen the ceiling of his ADP. There was a point, folks, this offseason, and us included, like it shouldn't be this way, where people just weren't really thinking about how long Godwin could be out, right? And he was at that time going in the 5th round. So let's say we get good news, Godwin's practicing, we think he's going to be ready for week 1. Like, I don't think his ADP is going to go much higher than like a 5th or a 4th round, with folks knowing that he could still be dinged up. And at that point, that's fine. I'll just pay that price then, but I definitely don't want to overpay now.
Just real quickly with some of those guys, because having Edwin on the podcast was fantastic. And what he was able to do is just from the date the guy got injured, the typical ACL recovery, I want to say it was 9 months. We took that date for these guys. Other ones he had done additional research. So with that in mind, Chris Godwin, October 3rd, Michael Gallup, mid-November. And these are, again, what he believes responsibly earliest they can be back. Maybe they do get ahead of schedule, but this is, again, just the projection. He doesn't, didn't get to look at every single knee himself. But Michael Gallup, mid-November. Jameson Williams, October 13th. John Mechie, September 10th. Odell Beckham, late December. KJ Hamler with the hip surgery, he said probably September, but caught us a little bit off guards. Robert Woods, September 1st, could be ready for week 1. Robert Tonyan, August. Logan Thomas, October. Taysom Hill, late October. That's a thing. We had a brief spell of Taysom Hill offseason hype, like he's coming back from Liz Frank. That's not good at all. I think those are the main ones. And Michael Thomas his response was just weird, and he was the biggest risk for that reason. And it is just a weird situation going on there, because Nate, like, if Michael Thomas is out, Chris Olave is going to boom up those freaking ranks.
Yeah, I think both him and I think we see that seems like to rotate a bunch of their wide receivers in and out. So I don't know if anyone outside of Olave would shoot up all that much, but I also waiting to hear about Alvin Kamara and how much his suspension will be for, and how much that impacts the offense as well, because he likes to see plenty of targets too.
We got one. Showstopper 85 wants to hear about N'Keal Harry on the Bears. Couldn't have asked for, a softer landing spot to go on. Like, literally, I don't think you could have asked for an easier wide receiver depth chart. But with that said, just a 7th rounder. If he sucks, he's probably not going to make the team. So I would still favor Mooney, Pringle, and Velas in 3 wide receiver sets. Dwayne, do you think differently?
No, it's just tough with Harry. Like, it's not like the Patriots haven't needed a wide receiver, right? Yeah. So that's my big concern with him, and he hasn't been able to do it.
It's not like he's been dealing with terrible quarterbacks either.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, he's had plenty of outs, with Brady, with the fact that it was a soft depth chart, but Mac Jones was fine last year.
No, I was thinking the Cam Newton, Brian.
I got you. Yeah. So, I mean, look, it's to your point, like from a depth chart standpoint, it's a good landing spot. Like, he could battle his way, but it's not somebody I'm going to start drafting now. It'll be something we'll just have to watch through camp. And even then, we know it's probably going to be a run heavy offense. If they get their way, at most it'll be like balanced. It'll be a balanced offense, because we know they're going to have Justin Fields involved in the running game. We know that that the coaching staff has ties to a balanced attack. So I think the one good thing is the depth chart, but outside of that, like, we don't know for sure about the quarterback. We don't know how often the offense wants to pass, and we just don't, there's not really been any positive signs with N'Keal Harry.
He was, in fact, a 1st rounder back in the day, but it's just sad, man. Like, Byron Pringle has just been a significantly better NFL player than N'Keal Harry. And again, like, he just got traded for a 7th rounder. The Bears used a 3rd rounder on Velas Jones. I tend to give the benefit of the doubt to guys in the organization that have had that sort of draft capital or compensation given to them by that direct front office. It's one of the reasons why I'm higher on Courtland Sutton than Jerry Jeudy, and why I really think Tim Patrick has a great chance at the end of drafts to do something great. Dwayne drafted him a little bit ago, is because, that was John Elway and the previous front office making that Jeudy 1st round pick. It was George Patton and the current group that chose to extend Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick to big money deals at the end of last year. So just something to keep in mind there. Andrew G talking about, I did see this report. I'm not sure how reliable. One guy thinking Watson gets a 4 to 6 game suspension. And he's saying that, even if it is BS, still think that he's great value at the end. I have taken Watson in round 18 a few times. I'm still nervous to do it too much earlier, but Nathan, did you even rank Watson?
He's like in the 30s to 40s at quarterback right now.
Okay, Dwayne, I've struggled to, I haven't necessarily drafted him here, but I think once you get past Fields and kind of Jameis, it's like, all right, do I really want to go with Tua or like Trevor Lawrence, or do we just like freaking gamble and go for Deshaun freaking Watson? Like that's kind of where I've ranked him, but I haven't always taken him there, to be fair. So maybe I'm a fraud, but thoughts?
I did. Well, I was in the same position and I was never taking him, so I moved him down.
Okay.
I just moved him down the ranks. I just feel like right now, like we're probably looking at a year-long suspension. I'm not a legal expert, but like it just doesn't feel good right now. But I think you can wait longer. You don't have to take him here, but I think the logic is right. Like once you get to that, that's where I used to have him, was right above that tier. It's like once you get to there, it's like, well, like what are you really shooting for? Yeah. Might as well just take Watson. The thing is now you can pretty much, I see him go in the last round of these a lot of times. So you don't have to spend as high of a pick.
All right. I am about to be on the clock. I'm somewhat panicking. Nathan, Nathan, how are you feeling about your team?
Talk for 5 minutes.
So fairly happy with my team. I've been continuing to get a number of guys in either the AFC or NFC West. So lots of games where they'll be playing each other and a number of teammates with each other as well. Also got multiple players that were in my wide receiver sleeper article that went out today. So happy to get some of those guys on my team and put my money where my mouth is. Got Sky Moore. I think this is the first time I was able to get a Sky Moore share. So happy to finally have him on my roster at a spot that I was comfortable with.
I end up taking DJ Chark. Don't love it. Maybe we'll get the heralded Goff Chark stack that everyone's after these days. Dwayne, we're through 13 rounds. How's the squad looking?
Feeling good. I mean, so when you start structurally the way I did with the 3 backs and the tight end, it's not a typical structure you see. So I went Cook, Aaron Jones, ETN, and Waller. And so since then, all of my picks have been wide receivers, except for sandwiching in Derek Carr to stack with Waller. And I was 1 pick away from Renfro, and I took Russell Gage instead. Looking back, like I could have done the double stack. Like that would have been a nice thing to have with Carr. But at the same time, we've talked about this in the past. You don't always get the stacks that you're setting up. So once you set up like the twofer and then you don't get your quarterback, it's like you don't like it as much. So I went ahead and went with, Russell Gage instead of Renfro. But overall, like I'm satisfied. Like my receivers are Juju, who I get access to, an offense I like. Not crazy about his profile over the last couple of years. But again, I went running backs early. Amon-Ra St. Brown, an actual talent profile that I love. Been super high on him. Russell Gage, we already talked about. Traylon Burks is slipping in ADP because apparently his asthma or his working out. But we know this is a guy that went in the first round, comes into a spot where we know the targets are vacated. So it's like the perfect match, right? We think he has the talent to take over. So I like buying the dip. That gives me upside on Traylon Burks. Tim Patrick, another AFC West guy. He's got Russell Wilson now. Could be just as likely to break out as Jerry Jeudy. You and I talked about this earlier, yet he goes 5-6 rounds after Jerry Jeudy. So it's just an ADP thing. Then Rondell Moore, who should get an expanded role this year, 2nd round pick last year. Again, AFC, NFC West. Again, Joshua Palmer, AFC, NFC West. And the thing I like about Palmer was actually something that you had looked at, Ian, and found was that, and I didn't notice it until I went back and looked again after you had mentioned it, but he really did fill in for both Mike Williams as well as Keenan Allen. Played inside and outside, and in those games performed really well. So I like the upside with Palmer. I think he gives you spike week upside, and he could actually give you more, right? If one of the other guys goes down, has that contingency value. And then Jalen Tolbert. Michael Gallup's not going to play till November. James Washington, we've seen before. So it's a high volume offense with a good quality quarterback in Dak Prescott. Yeah, number 1 is going to be Lamb. Number 2 is probably going to be Dalton Schultz. But after that, like the targets are kind of open. And Jalen Tolbert's a guy that in college worked downfield. So maybe he gives you those air yards, comes through with some big plays and a spike week. So, and then Waller, and I took Higbee in the last round just to give me another AFC West, stack option. But having Waller like tight end was low priority, but I'm happy to get access to the Rams offense in some way, shape, or form. So now I've got my vaunted Higbee, Josh Palmer stack Ian, ready for week 17. I know you're trembling.
And that is the thing with Josh Palmer. It was, had a couple drinks in me, and I was going at someone on I was engaging in healthy discourse on Twitter, if there is such a thing, about Palmer. I was just like, Jalen Guyton's still there, and they're going to split things and stuff. And I shout out to Underdog's own Hayden Winks, Josh Norris, who have been on Josh Palmer for a long time. And it's more so, and even him going to 12th round, it's starting to get to the point where he's no longer really this late round sleeper, especially on Underdog, where all the receivers always got to fly off. But it really is just for that upside if something happens to Mike or Keenan, because we are that confident in Justin Herbert. And there's not a ton of wide receivers that you can do it for, but just the fact the Chargers made it through this whole offseason without adding to the position room, you really got to like what we've seen, what we saw out of Palmer in year one. Again, just that potential upside, God forbid something happened to an aging Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, who still looks like he's never broken a fall in his entire life. Like, God love him. He catches the ball, but dude goes up for a contested catch and comes down like a bag of bricks every time. So Jalen Tolbert's another one where, with Michael Gallup potentially out, you're buying him at his floor, not his ceiling. Russell Gage as well. Like, Dwayne's second half of the draft looks a lot like my first. Unfortunately, couldn't quite keep it going. Let's see. You took Baker Mayfield, though. And
I had to. I wanted Jared Goff to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown, but he's got the same bye week as Derek Carr. And then Ryan Tannehill I could stack with Treylon Burks. He has the same bye week as Derek Carr. So, yeah, and I don't necessarily want a 3-quarterback build considering the way I started here. So
we'll talk about DJ Moore and Baker Mayfield per our friend Aaron Martinez. Appreciate you watching, man. Hey, talk about Baker and DJ, Dwayne.
Yeah, so with Mayfield, look, when nobody's claiming that he is, an elite NFL quarterback, but a lot of times really all we care about, like, to support like one really good fantasy option, is you just have to live in the margins like somewhere between average to below average to okay. You don't have to be great. You don't have to even necessarily be good. And we know that DJ Moore's got the profile of someone that's already given us multiple wide receiver 2 finishes. And the most likely players to eventually have a big wide receiver 1 breakout are the ones that have already given you multiple wide receiver 2 seasons in fantasy. Some things are easy. And so DJ Moore is still a young ascending player. We could argue that this is the best quarterback he's going to play with. You don't need to go nuts with him. I've seen some people say, oh, DJ Moore, 2nd round pick now. Maybe in a PPR, not in a half PPR. Maybe he could push towards that in a PPR, but right now I think in the middle of the 3rd, like to the early 4th round, DJ Moore is a nice value. I moved him up 7 spots in my overall ranks, which was like 3 spots in the wide receiver ranks after the change. So not a huge movement, but definitely enough to make him and put him in consideration, in the 3rd round.
I kind of forgot I only have one quarterback and tight end, so we are addressing that a little bit later than ideal. But you know what? When you reach on Kelsey and Mahomes, probably not a bad idea to take your time doing it as well. As long as Big Mick 428 isn't a dick, I will get Hayden Hurst. Come on. Oh, thank God. Hayden Hurst, Bengals, tight end 1. Seemingly, like, Hayden Hurst is one of the handful of guys that has a chance, I think, to be this year's Dawson Knox or the 2022 version of 2020 Robert Tonyan, because if he does have the same exact role that Uzoma had, we're not expecting anything crazy. It's going to be 60 to 70 targets. But, man, if you want to bet on a few quarterbacks in the league to maybe feed their tight end double-digit touchdowns on that few targets, Joe Burrow is one of them. So Hayden Hurst is, he's not Mark Andrews. He's not Kyle Pitts, but my God, if you're going to lose some position battles, we might as well beat those guys. He's not this, catch the ball and fall down type of tight end. He has shown the ability to get down the seam, ex-first round pick himself. I do think Hayden Hurst this late in the draft, man, one of the last tight ends that, if I didn't have Kelsey, I probably wouldn't love him as my tight end 2 on the roster, but I do have Kelsey, so I'm fine with it. Where do you fall on Hurst, Nate? Have you done an extended look at the late round kind of tight end scene? Do you have a favorite yet?
Yeah, so he's someone that I probably have around tight end 20. I do think he fits in that category of you can see that path where, he probably isn't going to see a ton of targets relative to some of these other tight ends, but he should always be on the field. He'll always probably be the 5th best option to throw to when he's on the field, but the Bengals should be in the red zone plenty, and if that leads to plenty of touchdowns, we've seen a number of tight ends, especially in the past couple of years, where they don't have to be the greatest tight end. All they have to do is score a lot of touchdowns, and then you have a tight end 1. So the path is there.
I continue to I think, Nate, you brought this up as your draft strategy. Hopefully you did. I'm gonna, if not, then this is what I think about it. With these quarterbacks that really keep falling and falling, Carson Wentz, Davis Mills, like in best ball, we got to draft some of these guys to fill out the roster, particularly if you just fall behind on it. And, taking one of these Wentz or Goff or even Davis Mills, like in 16 to even 18 sometimes, like I'm fine doing that when the other option is reaching on guys like Zach Wilson and Tua. And, I think at the end of the day, like if we were entering a ranking competition, like you probably should be more optimistic about what some of these more proven veterans, albeit not proven great, but proven average more times than not, can bring to the table in these late rounds when the other options are, complementary receivers and run first offenses or pure backup running backs. So just remember, don't hate the player, hate the ADP. And when you can get a legit starting quarterback projected to go for 17 games at the very end of these drafts, not the worst idea in the world. Dwayne, you got 2 more picks. Any favorites from the group? Is Jamal Williams gone yet?
No, he was my target last round or 2 rounds ago, and he was gone. No, I'm just trying to decide. Like, I think I still need another quarterback. I mean, I need one more back. I could always use a receiver. I'm definitely not going tight end. So we'll see what happens here. With Carr, I really like Carr this year, but I think having 3 quarterbacks is the wise move here. Just because, if we have games where, he can't, it's not like he insulates anything with his legs. We do know the shootouts and those things will be there. And that's all set up, in the roster that I've built. So I'm considering going with Wentz here, but I don't know. I'm definitely torn.
I was doing a draft with John Daigle, Hayden Winks, and Davis Matek. Matic. There we go. Love Davis. He was a real fun guest, but I was giving them some shit for just, the constant, like, I guess you can call it contrarian mindset, but they just go through like these endless scenarios where you're probably getting 0.0001% leverage on it and stuff. And like I like messed up with the quarterback and I ended up taking basically Kenny Pickett and Trubisky at the end. And I kind of rationalized it. And they come up with this ridiculous like conspiracy thing going on about like why it was actually sharp. And it's like, come on, guys, let's not overthink this here. Sometimes if you just want to take the better player, I think that's an okay enough strategy. I know it's a big tournament and all this too, but kids just want to go crazy sometimes these days. I did get the heralded Davis Mills, Brandon Cook stack. Wasn't exactly shooting for that, but Dwayne went ahead and took Marcus Mariota.
No, Wentz went ahead of me.
Wow.
What's funny though is I'm actually fine with Mariota just because he's going to carry. The standalone value might be better, because we're just hoping like that, we get Mariota running the ball. So I'm actually fine with it. The running backs, I've got Cook, Jones, ETN, and then all I have is Brian Robinson after that. So I'm going to take another back
Chris
with
Evans.
This next pick. Yeah, I'm going to take one no matter what nobody else is going to take. I'm just going to go ahead and set up Derek Carr. So I'm going to take Kenyan Drake.
Ooh, bro. I have an article going out tomorrow. Kenyan Drake popped as one of the top running backs in terms of difference in rank, standard to PPR. And for the first time, I was like, hold on. Could Drake be their pass down back? Because we're freaking out about Ramondre Stevenson maybe getting that role in New England when the same offense is probably going to be run in Las Vegas. Like, again, this is the spot where you draft Kenyan Drake. I had to be so clear about that in the article when I talked about it because I just have this terrible feeling that PFF Fantasy Social is just going to be, Ian Hardis is telling you go draft Kenyan Drake. No, but we should be paying it. We should be, maybe the last pick in the right type of league. But like we should be talking a little more about who's going to get that Raiders pass down role because we don't really think it's going to be Jacobs. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be. I think they're going to use multiple backs, and if it's going to be Zamir, if it's going to be Abdullah, like who do you think it is right now, Dwayne? Because if he's healthy, it probably could be Kenyan Drake.
Drake is my most drafted back in full PPR right now over on DraftKings, just because of what we're talking about. Number one, like all the other things we talk about, I get a lot of Derek Carr, so he's an easy last round pick. I do think he will be the receiving back. I think he's also got potentially, right, he could be the second back behind, Jacobs, meaning if Jacobs goes down, like he could take 55-60% of the work, right? And Zamir White could be handling the early down duties. I think there's a lot of ways for Kenyan Drake to get there. Like right now, the way I look at him, he's probably in that Rex Burkhead, like kind of jack of all trades, role where you're going to be out there some on passing downs, going to relieve Jacob some. They'll have Zamir White mixing in as well, so they'll probably have 3 guys rotating. But I think in the AFC West, especially when you have Derek Carr, with all the shootouts we're going to have, they can beat a lot of passing game scripts. Like if he just gets the passing down work, right, and has contingency upside from there, I think Kenyan Drake is a really good player to target. He also, not in the last season, but he was injured. We've also seen him show explosive playmaking ability as well. Yeah. So I love backs like that. They could get on the field in passing downs. They've also got an ability, to break longer plays, even though, he's not somebody that's necessarily stayed healthy, his whole career. I think Kenyan Drake is a great last round shot. And over here on Underdog, why I like him is he never gets drafted ever. So if you are right, and his profile is really similar to a lot of the other guys that are going in that last round, Ian, like, people want to take Chris Evans. Like, really, is Chris Evans that different than what we're talking about with Kenyan Drake? And you're probably only going to be facing like 0.01% of the rest of the prize pool of the other players have Kenyan Drake. So I think there's a lot of things to like about him.
Again, that's why I like running some of these just base projection studies, because Kenyan Drake was someone I barely even thought of this offseason. So on me. Apparently, Dwayne, you have been thinking hard about this, but better late than never. And, it's July 12th. We're getting there. We're getting there, guys. Still got a little bit to go before real draft season starts. Nate, everyone can find your lovely work on PFF.com. Again, you just released your fantasy football PPR rankings. Anything else on the docket this week? You just could let that beast hold it someplace.
I had the sleeper wide receivers go out today. I got quarterback tiers tomorrow, updates to my dynasty rankings and dynasty rookie rankings later this week, and then basically an article a day every weekday from now until forever.
Absolute king shit at PFF_ Nate Yankee on Twitter. Pretty fun Twitter game as it is, Nate, but man, I don't think there's anyone more valuable just after preseason and real games, holidays, whatever the hell it is. Nate has you covered with the fastest snap counts and just like, actually other important actionable stuff going on. Truly appreciate it from myself, Dwayne, and the whole community. Dwayne, you have also been grinding. Your top 150 are out tomorrow. Nate beat you to the punch a little bit there, but you know what? I'm sure it'll still be fun.
Yeah. Well, I had a top 150 in June, but this is the update to it, right? So we've got some movement. So I've got notes on ADP movement as well as movement within the list itself. So I've got notes on about, I've got the top 150 list and there's notes on about 30 of the guys in there. So I'll have that. And then we'll be into the strategy articles. So I'll have a quarterback strategy article coming out later this week, and then also the running back strategy article. And then next week we'll hit wide receivers and tight ends.
Great day to be great as always. At Dwayne McFarland on Twitter. You can catch my 10 wide receivers who have really high projected target totals, not such high. Actually, they do have high ADP, but like, good ADP. Like you can draft them late and they have high target totals. That's the actual title of the entire piece, that 26-word sentence I just said. Anyway, check that out on PFF.com. Got a couple of stuff on running backs and the difference in scoring formats. Also, tight end pecking orders around the league. So at iHeartIt's on Twitter as always. And again, everyone, if you're looking to get a free PFF subscription, okay, it actually costs you $10, but that's still pretty reasonable. Go on over to Underdog Fantasy, use promo code PFF, deposit and play just $10 using promo code PFF, and you'll get that free PFF Elite subscription. And hey, if you want to just play a bunch on Underdog because it's a fun time, and if you win millions on freaking one of the tournaments, who cares about a simple deposit of $100? Underdog will match that for you using promo code PFF. So thanks so much for tuning in. For Dwayne and for Nate, I'm Ian. Until next time, take care, everybody.